hip hop, the untold story of the behind the scenes kingmakers, right? Right? That's what it is. The behind the scenes kingmakers. Let's bring this up a little bit closer. Rap's most notorious kingmakers. The story behind rap's most notorious kingmakers, right? So this documentary details 5 kingmakers. See, in hip hop music, hip hop is a music that comes from the streets, right? And because it comes from the streets, all the rappers, all the hip hop rappers who come through may have known the streets, but they may not have been in the streets. But to negotiate and go to other cities to what they call check in and have the permission of those who are the ones who run the cities, you know, you have to check in. This is the story of those particular group of people, 5 of those particular people.
You ready to
right?
read the name?
Yeah, go ahead and
Eugene Henley, known as Big U, right? Deborah Ante, we know her as Waka Flocka's mom, as well as management to many people, including Nicki Minaj, right? Previous manager, dead. James Ante, Bimmy, Kristen Matthews, Trick,
from Detroit.
And Jacquees, is it Agnet? Haitian Jack.
Right? So these are the 5 that they focus their lens on, right? And how they have become kingmakers of hip hop, right? Now, take me for instance. I was not a street dude, but I was a hip hop dude that went into various different neighborhoods, going to the various parks in my city, selling my mixtapes and later mixtapes and mix CDs. I would actually walk up to people and shake their hands and do that and actually sell things. So people knew me from that, and that's how my street credibility built up, because I was willing to be able to go into other different cities. And once I got on the radio and I would put my opinions across, like what we do on our shows here, and I remember we were down at EC. Now I come from the northeast side. EC is the southeast side, and my wife and I, we were down at EC, and I was passing out flyers, and you know, my wife was in the car, and I'm walking, just passing out flyers to people, and it was a group of dudes in white tees, and I gave all of them, and the OG was standing out there. I gave him one, you know, I gave him dap, you know, saying you always give respect to the OG, right? And so the dude was like, this that dude from off the radio that say that we're targets wearing a white tee. And I said, well, yeah, I said that. And then the OG said, well, that's true. You know what I mean? And then he gave me dap, and then I went on my way. But it's the street cred. You get street cred from being able to be there. I wasn't a street dude. I wasn't doing street dude things, but I was out there and selling cassettes and CDs to street dudes, or passing out flyers to street dudes. So my name built in many different neighborhoods around Cleveland, Ohio, right? And so that's how you build street credibility, right? And so this story, however, is about street dudes and street women who got into the music business and used their ability to, that they already knew how to hustle, and they took that hustle game and turned it into success within the hip hop music game. And that's what this story is about. Hip hop, the untold story of rap's most notorious kingmakers. And we just labeled it out. It is worth watching. It is I don't know how many part series it is, but when we ended, we saw up to part 3, up to part 4. We saw some parts that hadn't come out yet, but so we saw up to part 4. I don't know what's coming on television. But watch this documentary, Hip Hop, the untold story of rap's most notorious kingmakers. What do you think about it?
I think this documentary was like well done, right? And it's interesting to learn the behind the scenes and stuff because I love information, like we was talking about earlier, me watching and listening to the news during the week while I'm working, right? So it's like just to learn the backstory, right? And how they grew up, right? And their love for their people in their community and the music. And how they made stars, right? And it's just well done because this is the first time that we've seen a project put together like this that gives roses while they're alive.
That's true,
right? To the people who helped so many artists. And so this FX Hip Hop Uncovered is a really, really good docuseries.
So that's another thing. People are watching FX, or they go to see a 20th Century Fox movie, or they watch FXX, or they watch again FX.
Just regular Fox.
But they're not watching Fox News. They're all under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
They've got you connected in. So why aren't you watching the news station too to see what the people who have you hooked on the entertainment really think about you, or get actual news from a news outlet that's kicking news and not just doing talking heads? Why would you separate your thought process away when you're on that? So that's what I'm saying. Is what we're seeing on TV to connect and brainwash? Now, when I'm watching this, I'm looking at it, I say, this is almost like a glorification of, as black people, having to do wrong to get to the right. What about being the person who does right, but gets the street cred, like I described before, to move forward? How about that? Like, and then move forward, and then be able to bring out acts and push groups and things, right? That's what we're looking at. So, is this programming our minds to something, right? It is. Again, we weren't in control of it, and we're still not in control of it actually, right? So, let's look at it. Cinematography on this. It's a 10, right? Introduction of the 5 various characters and various artists that were around as characters. That's a 10. The use of stock footage, cutting in between, and not stock footage, but footage of actual events happening in hip hop at the time, or still images of hip hop happening at the time, cut in with what's actually happening now, interviews and things. That's a 10. Character development and character arc, introducing the character and then the character arc of each one. Beautifully done. That's a 10. Yeah. The way that they cut between and they introduce you to each character, then they come back to the story, keeping it fresh, keeping it moving, and not keeping it linear, but keeping it non-linear and keeping it moving. That's a 10. Sound quality 10. Images 10. Using film grammar to actually tell the story. That's a 10. So what do we have to say about it? What would you give it?
Definitely a 10. Because like I said, I love the storytelling. And like you just said, I love the way it's cut. Like it jumps from you'll learn one story and then it'll go into another story, and it keeps it fresh. It keeps it interesting. And before you know, that episode is gone off, and you're like, dang, it's off already. You know, so it's so interesting.
And you're glad that you can binge watch. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So I definitely give it a 10.
Yeah. So I give hip hop, the untold story of rap's most notorious kingmakers.
Yeah.
I give that most definitely a 10.